Not every mystery makes the headlines. Some are too strange, too personal, too forgotten. Across small-town America, there are stories that never made it past the local paper. Stories that faded like the people they were about. But every now and then, someone stumbles across an old photo, a police report, or a rumor that never died. Tonight, we reopen 3 of those stories. 3 cases buried beneath dust and denial, where silence hides more than the truth. These are 3 scary small-town disappearance stories. There's something about small towns in Maine. They carry a silence that feels heavier. Like the woods, remember what the people forget. In the fall of 1996, that silence wrapped around the town of Ashcroft, population 2,000, when a 27-year-old woman named Emily Harper vanished without a trace. Emily wasn't the type to just disappear. She worked at the local library, took care of her mother, and spent her evenings walking by the river, the same river she grew up beside. Locals described her as gentle, kind, maybe a little too trusting. On the evening of October 19th, the last person to see her was a gas station clerk on Route 11. Emily had stopped for fuel. She was smiling. The clerk remembered because she made a joke about the cold, said it felt like the kind of night where even ghosts stay inside. She paid, waved, and drove off toward home. She never made it. The next morning, her car was found just 2 miles from the gas station, neatly parked at the edge of the Ashcroft Bridge, doors locked, keys still in the ignition. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no footprints leading away. Just a faint handprint on the passenger side window. And when police tested it, it wasn't hers. Search teams combed the woods for days. Drones, dogs, divers, nothing. The river was calm, too calm. Locals said it hadn't moved like that in years. One fisherman swore he saw something that week, a woman standing waist-deep in the river at dusk, her hair drifting in the current. He called out, but she turned and walked beneath the surface. They never found who it was. Investigators started to notice strange details. Emily's mother said her daughter had been hearing whispers outside her window for weeks before she vanished, faint voices calling her name. Her journal, found beside her bed, mentioned someone following me through the woods and a reflection in the river that doesn't move when I do. The handwriting grew more erratic near the end. The last entry read, "If I'm gone, don't look in the water, it remembers." Police dismissed it as stress. Locals called it a haunting. But then 6 months later, something surfaced. A fisherman discovered a small wooden box tangled in his net, carved initials, EH. Inside were 3 things: a river stone, a locket with her mother's photo, and a torn scrap of her library uniform, soaked but clean. No DNA, no evidence of foul play. The case went cold in 1998. Files locked away, evidence sealed. But every October, locals say they hear footsteps on the Ashcroft Bridge, slow, deliberate, echoing over the water. And sometimes, if the mist is thick enough, you can see a woman standing at the center just before dawn, staring down into the river. They call her the librarian of Ashcroft now. A ghost story for tourists. But the old sheriff still keeps Emily's photo on his desk. He says it's not a ghost they hear, it's something older. Something the town forgot to bury. Some disappearances are crimes. Others feel like the earth itself swallowed them whole. And in Ashcroft, Maine, the river still remembers her name. It's strange how some places never leave you, even when the people do. The town of Millhaven, Kansas used to be one of those places. A quiet farming town, surrounded by endless rows of corn. The kind of place where everyone knew your name and your secrets. But in the summer of 1983, Millhaven became known for one thing. The boy who walked into the cornfield and never came out. His name was Eli Warner. He was 11. Brown hair, bright eyes, always carrying that old Polaroid camera his dad gave him. He liked taking pictures of animals, sunsets, sometimes the scarecrows. On July 3rd, around 7:30 p.m., Eli was seen near the Miller family's property, a massive cornfield that stretched nearly 2 miles in every direction. He told his friend he was going to get a really cool picture before dark. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. At first, no one panicked. Millhaven was safe. Kids disappeared for hours all the time, chasing fireflies or sneaking into barns. But when the sun went down and Eli still hadn't come home, something in the air changed. His parents searched with flashlights. The sheriff's deputies joined in. For 3 days, hundreds of volunteers combed through every inch of the field. But the only thing they found was Eli's camera, lying near a broken scarecrow at the center of the property. The last picture he took was still inside. It showed the scarecrow, old straw hat, flannel shirt, except there was something behind it. Something tall, thin, human-shaped but too long, like it didn't fit right in the frame. When police returned to the field to investigate, the scarecrow was gone. The wooden pole snapped clean in half, as if something heavy had been standing on it. Locals started whispering about an old story, something their grandparents used to tell. About the cornfield man, a figure that roamed the fields after sundown. He wasn't a ghost, they said. He was the one the ghosts were afraid of. Most brushed it off as small-town hysteria. But when the sheriff sent the photos to the state lab, they noticed something. In the background of that last image, past the stalks and shadows, you could see what looked like a second figure. Kneeling, reaching toward the boy. A week later, another farmer reported seeing lights moving through his fields around midnight like flashlights, but with no one holding them. He went to check. He never finished his report. They found his boots at the edge of his property, pointed toward the Miller field. By mid-August, the investigation quietly ended. No body, no footprints, no explanation, just the sound of the wind and those endless rows of corn swaying under the moonlight. Eli's parents moved away a year later, but the Miller field was never harvested again. Locals say the corn started growing differently, taller, denser, and sometimes after dark, you could see a small shadow moving between the rows, holding something shiny that caught the moonlight. Some claim to have found Polaroids scattered in the dirt, blurred faces, empty fields, a shape standing too close to the lens. Others say if you call Eli's name 3 times from the edge of the field, you'll hear a single click from somewhere deep inside. The Miller property was finally sold in 1997. The new owners bulldozed the field to build homes. But every year on July 3rd, the night Eli vanished, something strange happens. The lights on the new houses flicker. Phones ring once, with no one on the other end. And residents swear they can hear a boy's voice in the static whispering, "Take a picture." They say if you look closely enough, every photo taken near Millhaven's old fields has the same thing in common, somewhere, hidden in the shadows. There's a figure watching. And if you ever find yourself standing in the middle of those rows at night, whatever you do, don't turn around. Churches are meant to feel safe. They're supposed to keep the darkness out. But sometimes, the darkness finds its way inside. In Rutherford Hollow, a quiet mountain town in West Virginia, there's an abandoned church that no one dares to enter anymore. St. Mary's Chapel, boarded up, crumbling, and, according to locals, cursed. The story goes back to November 14, 1991, a Sunday night service that changed everything. That evening, 34 people walked into St. Mary's for the weekly prayer meeting. Only one ever walked out. The survivor's name was Helen Crane, the church organist. When police arrived, they found her outside in the rain, soaked, trembling, her hands covered in wax and blood. She kept repeating the same words. It stopped singing, the church stopped singing. Inside, everything was wrong. The pews were overturned. Candles melted into puddles on the floor. The altar cloths burned at the edges, like they'd been touched by lightning. But there was no sign of the congregation. Every single person gone. Helen's account was the only lead investigators had. She claimed that during the final hymn, the lights began to flicker. The air grew thick, heavy enough that people struggled to breathe. And then mid-song, she said the organ kept playing on its own. At first, they thought it was her imagination, until police discovered something inside the organ pipes. Fragments of torn clothing and strands of human hair, embedded deep within the metal. The townspeople said the church had always been strange. Built in the late 1800s on the ruins of an older chapel that burned to the ground. The land beneath it had a history, whispers of old rituals and voices that came from the mountains when the fog rolled in. But no one ever talked about it out loud. Helen was taken in for questioning, then moved to a psychiatric hospital in Charleston. The case went cold, and St. Mary's was sealed off, its doors chained shut by the county. For years, nothing happened. Until 2004. A group of paranormal researchers broke into the church one night, recording everything for a documentary that was never released. The footage was later recovered by state police after their van was found overturned on a back road outside Rutherford Hollow. Inside the vehicle, investigators found blood on the seats, but no bodies. What was on the tape still chills even seasoned investigators. For the first 20 minutes, you can hear them laughing, exploring, commenting on the strange smell of candle wax and old dust. Then, around midnight, a faint singing starts in the background. They thought it was playback from their equipment, until the female voice in the group says, "It's coming from the organ." And then, right before the footage cuts out, you can hear someone whisper, "They're still here." The remaining few minutes are corrupted. The audio distorts, the camera shakes violently, and a shadow passes in front of the lens, not human, not shaped like anything natural. The last frame shows a hand pressed against the lens, covered in wax. The team was never found. Local police sealed the church again, this time with welded steel plates. They even poured cement into the organ to prevent anyone from disturbing it. But people who live near Rutherford Hollow say that sometimes, on rainy nights, you can still hear the organ playing by itself. And if you walk close enough to the chapel, you can hear voices singing inside, perfectly in sync. Only there's no one in there. Helen Crane died in 2012, still repeating those same words she'd said 20 years earlier. It stopped singing, the church stopped singing. Some believe the townspeople were taken. Others think the church itself consumed them. But if you ever find yourself driving through Rutherford Hollow and you see that old chapel on the hill, don't stop. Don't listen. And whatever you do, if you hear the organ start to play, keep driving. Maybe it's not the towns that are cursed. Maybe it's the memories they refuse to let go of. Every road, every field, every river holds a name that was never found. And the people who remember them, they don't talk much anymore. Some mysteries are meant to be solved, Others are meant to be left where they belong, deep in the ground, beneath time and silence. But if you listen closely enough, time always whispers the same question. Did they ever really leave? If you want to uncover more forgotten cases and chilling small-town mysteries, make sure to subscribe to CaseCrypt Vault, because some stories are too strange to be left untold.